Hi, welcome to Drinks with Rob, where I get to do two things I enjoy. One is sit down with a successful entrepreneur, and the other is have a drink. Today we're shooting from Rothman's, which is on Park Avenue South and 18th Street, clearly here in the basement. And I'd like to welcome all of you, and I'd like to say hello now to David Schnurman from Lawline. David, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
I'm really
for coming.
excited to be here.
And let's have a drink.
Cheers.
Cheers. Refreshing after a hard day's work.
Absolutely.
So, David, tell us a little bit about Lawline, what it is.
So Lawline.com is the largest provider of online continuing legal education in the country. Every attorney, when they become when they start practicing, they have to take a certain amount of hours every year to keep their license. So we provide it all online, not only in New York, but for the whole entire country.
For attorneys only?
We just actually got involved with accountants, certified financial planners, enrolled agents, and we're expanding from there. Once we've built the platform, there's no reason we shouldn't get into all 26 other professionals as well. So we're really excited about doing that.
All right, we'll get into your plans in a second.
So
when did you start the company? How did you start it?
So in 2006, I was graduating law school, and I didn't have a job. I started a show called True NYC. I met an entrepreneur who does web development. My father, 5 years previously, had started a website called Lawline.com that did some sort of online education. So I took the name and I rebuilt the website in 2006. So when I graduated, or when I took the bar, day one I was on the phones trying to create courses. And I paid about $2,500 for that first website.
Right, wow. And give us a metric, of how the size and scope of your business today.
So this year we're going to do somewhere around $6.5 million in revenue. We have 35 employees, and we have 800 hours of programming in CLE, which by the end of this year will be about 1,000 hours total. And we do about 40 hours of courses every single week. We live webcast and we do them online as well.
So so you had this idea, you had a little bit of a platform to kind of get started with, not much, but a little bit. How did you get the word out about this where you're now doing, $6.5 million a year in revenue?
Well, I just had a meeting with my company. We've got 35 people and a lot of people coming in now, and they come in, they see this infrastructure, they see a company, and they just come in, and some people were kind of just doing their job and doing one thing. And so I had a meeting. I said, look, guys, let me explain to you how we got here. Because nothing's set in life, and we're trying to get even further. I had to hustle in the beginning. And I want everyone to have that hustle mentality, because in order to get things to happen, the first thing I did was I acted a lot bigger than I was. And I started getting on the phone and making partnership calls, because I only had a couple hours of programming.
Right.
So I made 2 really strategic partnerships in the beginning with other providers to give us hundreds of hours of programming from the very beginning. And the only reason I can get those partnerships was because I told them I had partnerships with other people.
Right.
So that right away put us on the map. And then I used my credit.
Entrepreneur hustle.
Yeah, I lucked out that I got, in my first couple calls, I got some pretty good partnerships.
Right.
And then I used my credit card and bought some direct mail pieces, as well as put on Google AdWords. And I really, again, lucked out when I started the business. There was a couple deadlines in some states where attorneys needed to get it done, so I focused all my energy there. And literally within the first few months, I was able to make back the money plus a little bit extra, and I just kind of built on that.
So partnerships, you got you the content, and then you had, you basically marketed some form of advertising to get the attorneys.
I say for the first, let's say, 3 to 5 years, and even now, but more so we're an education company, we were really a marketing company that happened to sell online education,
right.
Because there's a lot of competition out there. So we really knew how to market it. We figured out who the market was first. We figured out how to get whatever list we needed, how to get to them,
right.
And then we built the packages around them.
Sounds a hell of a lot more exciting than being an attorney.
It's funny because we work with a lot of attorneys, and a lot of attorneys are always either not happy with what they do or looking to get in business somehow.
Right.
There's a lot of great jobs as attorneys out there, but the biggest thing that I'd say that I love about doing this, and any entrepreneur would say, is the creativity of being able to create where you're going and sit down. And with websites now, we're pretty much at 98% an online business, is have a canvas to make anything become a reality.
Right. Did you ever practice as an attorney?
Why would I do that? No, I never practiced. I do have a license. I took the bar. I passed the bar.
You're taking your continuing
I have enough
credits.
continuing education courses to keep me busy for a while.
Right.
But I do love learning. And so we have, like I said, 800 hours of programming. And that's in every single practice area. And right now what's really interesting is we're developing a lot of our content for the layman, that we call it, or the non-attorney, because a lot of the stuff is how to start a business, how to run a business.
So let's talk about that. So you were working exclusively for on the attorney side of the business, continuing legal credits. Then the accountants, I guess, was recent, right?
In the past year and a half or so. We started doing it. It took 3 years to get approval. That's how slow this process is.
Right. And now you're broadening to the other continuing education industries, I guess.
Correct. So 6 years ago, 7 years ago when we first met, I started True NYC. My passion is exactly what you're doing. We all love entrepreneurship. We love being in that game. And sort of the two areas that we're focusing on now is mandatory continuing education, which is every single, from social worker to teacher to doctor to attorney, anywhere where you have a license, to non-mandatory education.
So that's a big switch. So you have people that have to spend the money somewhere, right, to get the continuing education credits. Now you're going to people who just want to learn. Isn't that a totally different business?
It's not, because where the core of our business comes from is, I believe, in lifelong learning. We're trying to make learning easy. So we just happen to be in the CLE game. But we don't want to limit ourselves to that. So when we focus on making learning easy, or lifelong learning, which is certainly lifelong learning is forever. So after the traditional schooling,
it's lifelong,
right? But after the traditional, now it's a buzz phrase.
Right.
10 years ago, it was kind of, just didn't make sense, and now it's really doable. So my dream was always to get into when it's not mandatory, when you actually want to learn to improve your skills, which people do in mandatory education. So it's always been on the game plan. Now it's just there's a lot of right energy going on that we built it up.
So a lot of business experts would say, well, you know what, that sounds great, but don't put too many resources there. You may jeopardize, because that's really a new business. There are some similarities, as you just said, but you really want to be careful of not jeopardizing your existing business, your cash cow, if you will.
Yeah.
So what's your thought process through all that?
So I completely agree. You don't want to get too cocky, let's say, use the word, because if you focus somewhere else.
We're having beer, you can say anything you want.
So you focus somewhere else, all of a sudden the big fear is you look back, oh my God, I didn't pay attention to this part of the business for a year, now it's really suffering. I'm thinking in the future. Now the mandatory CLE market is the price is getting more competitive.
Right.
The price is getting lower and lower every year. It's essentially a commodity. Certainly you can say price, quality, service, but when it's mandatory, and certainly any attorney can get a camera, and in certain states become an accredited provider, the price has gone down to zero, essentially. So what I am doing is preserving the essence of where we're growing in the future.
Right. So you're looking ahead. You don't want to be in a situation where you're now in commodity pricing, where you can't make money.
I'm looking ahead. I'm also following, it sounds cheesy, but my passion.
Right.
And that is being able to make lifelong learning easy for everyone. And to me, one of the things that we say is the best form of learning is teaching. So that's, when we get all of our faculty, when they prepare a course and they put it together, they learn more than anybody else. And so we want to create a platform where people can easily teach online as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of things going on there. We got to throw a lot of things to the wall.
Sounds like it. So New York Enterprise Report readers may realize that Lawline sounds familiar, and it does, because last year at the Small Business Awards, you won the award for leadership in HR. And one of the things that I thought was really cool, and I think I ran into you a year ago, 2 years, I don't even remember, you had these cards that had your core values on the back. So you started this business in 2006. Tell us your thoughts about, when did you start thinking about culture? Was it right at the beginning? Was it something that happened later? Because that's, a lot of people go into business saying, I want to have a specific culture, and then all of a sudden things start happening, and you got to answer the phones and all that stuff, and that culture stuff goes out the window. The
first thing, yes, culture was always my number one priority, or one of my priorities. I went about it the wrong way in the beginning, though. In the beginning, I was more focused. I wanted to be like the jeans, T-shirt, Google-esque atmosphere. ping pong table or whatever you can, where we all it was more that type of setting. That worked for the first year or two.
Right.
Once you build up to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people, if you don't have a culture by design, as Jack Daly says, it all falls apart. And it did, because we had a couple bad apples and nobody was accountable. So we rebuilt the entire structure. And Good to Great was a great book that I read, because it says if you don't have a culture of Jim Collins, if you don't have a culture of discipline, nothing else matters. So without that strict culture of discipline, where somebody works harder, the next person wants to work just as hard or even more, having a great culture will never last long. So when we realized, the first thing we had to do was rechange how we recruited people, because we were recruiting people just kind of by seat of the pants, like, oh, you like him. And so we built our own system how to recruit people, and we came up with something called LADES. LADES was likability, articulate, intelligence, driven, and sociable. And these are things that we consider raw attributes that don't change over time. So you're not going to be any more intelligent than you are when you do the interview, any more driven. So we did our best to have some sort of metric. And the reason I'm bringing this up is this became the beginning of how we determined our core values. About 2 years later, if you fast forward, we're sitting in what we call the idea room, which is all idea paint, which is whiteboard paint, on the walls, and trying to again, Jim Collins wrote a Harvard Review article called Missions, Values, and Value Statements. Great article. It's $1.50. You can buy it online. And he talked about how you build all that. And we realized we didn't have core values. And he said it didn't matter what your core values were, as long as they're used a lot and people grow on them.
Shared, right.
So I looked at what interests me, and then we looked at what the main people in the company, who you call the Mars group in a way. So if you were to restart your company on Mars, who would be the people you'd bring with you that would take your core values, and what they had in common. So after a couple of days, it wasn't just one day, we came up with the acronym as TED. And we didn't realize it was an acronym until afterwards. And it was because of the TED conference, it sort of makes sense.
Right.
And so I'll say the 5 core values, and everybody in the company knows them by heart. It's actively learning, seeking creative solutions, taking time to help others, exuding optimism, and driven to find a better way. Every day I am, and it's all about them.
Right.
Doesn't have our phone number, just it's about them. And we make our decisions, and sort of like we look at Zappos a lot. We kind of copy a lot of the things that they do because we're impressed at how they do it. And
they sold for $1 billion, so
yeah,
it
could go worse. So we make a lot of our decisions from hiring to what we do to teaching courses to the direction that we go in a company based on the core values. And we create a core. Not only do we have that, we have a core values newsletter. We have a culture blog. And we promote it on a regular basis where every month, somebody who exudes something of the core values or whatever they did, we give that example and we reward them for that.
Right.
And it's been that has been one of the single strongest things that we've done for the company. And the way we branded it and the way we kind of brainwashed or drink the juice than anything else we've done, because it gives everyone a foundation to where we're going and who we are.
Pretty cool stuff, and obviously it's resulted in a nice amount of, in a fast growth rate since 2006. David, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on Drinks with Rob. You're welcome back, of course, anytime. And
Can I finish my drink?
Yeah, should we chug?
Afterwards.
Afterwards, all right. So,
well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be on here.
See you guys soon.